This is greytFM, a podcast series by greytHR, produced by Timber Media.
AI, oh, it's not a nursery rhyme. It's just our reality. I'm not going to lie. I felt a little bit silly doing that, but that's okay. Welcome back to greytFM, everybody. Ahalya here, bringing you another conversation from the world of HR. Now, if you tuned into our 2024 year ender, it's okay if you didn't. You can just tune in now. It's very relevant, by the way. In that episode, we talked about how 2023 and 2024 were like the years of just getting to know AI, and how 2025 is going to be the year of taking AI to the next level and making the best use of it. And if you think about it, it's true. We're still figuring out where AI can be our friend and where it's our foe. And in HR, there is no doubt of its potential. We've seen so many processes and aspects of the world of HR transform because of AI, from learning and development to talent acquisition. It's really elevated the experience greatly for HR professionals. But what about the workforce on the other side of it? That's what we're going to be exploring today. How can AI be leveraged in employee engagement and communication? And more importantly, the question to be asking is, to what extent should it be leveraged? Thought-provoking conversation coming your way with the help of Idris Arshad, Head of People at Asthma Lung UK. Welcome, Idris. Thank you so much for being with us here on greytFM today.
Thank you for having me.
So Idris, this year, I kind of want to give people a taste of our speakers' real life experiences right at the opening of our podcasts and our conversations. So let me ask you a starter question, an icebreaker, if you will. How have you enjoyed using AI as a people professional? And do you feel confident using it these days?
It's the topic that is at every single conference and every webinar that you see. It's AI is always there. And for me, I think the curiosity began with, obviously, as with many, with when ChatGPT originally came in. And I first used it to draft a job description to see how good it would be for a HR role. And, the results were not surprising, but intriguing in what it produces. And obviously, ChatGPT has evolved. Other things have come out, Copilot from Microsoft and others. So I've come through it from a curiosity point of view always. And I would say, a safe use of AI where I think it has its uses. It also has limits as well. And there's an area for me around safe usage of AI, regulation and governance. But for me, I think it's where I would happily use it. I think it's very good for HR professional. I think from a research point of view, if you ever wanted data and if you were to use your prompting right of AI, you can get data in a matter of seconds that would probably take you 6 or 7 different links and readings of reports. So I think that's the bit I can safely say, okay, get me the data from McKinsey, let's just say from the CIPD on the labour market outlook, and summarize it for me. It can do that without us having time spending on researching that ourselves. So that's one aspect of it. And I think the next aspect is getting used to it from a system point of view. And what I mean by that is technology, our HR systems have already integrated AI into it and are using it. And I think that's the second bit why I've enjoyed seeing that. Again, a safe use of AI, but within the parameters of your HRIS systems, maybe your payroll, maybe your employee engagement systems, reward platforms. I think that's the second. I'm really curious again to see how far AI can take that. And that's 2 areas I would pick out.
Okay, fantastic. So that's a good starting point for us. And interestingly enough, not too much of a mention there about communicating with employees, right? And I think that's a big conversation that has been happening, is because HR, it has the word human in it, right? So what happens when AI becomes a part of those communication processes, and how does it interfere with the human connection within a workforce? I think that's really a question everyone's asking. And at this point of the conversation, I'd like to just point out a few statistics that come from a Deloitte report titled AI-Powered Employee Experience: How Organizations Can Unlock Higher Engagement and Productivity. And this report says that 73% of American businesses use or plan to use AI-powered chatbots for instant messaging. Moreover, 61% of US companies use AI to optimize emails, while 55% deploy AI for personalized services. Now, this is just about the US, but employers world over are looking at AI, I think, as a viable tool to enhance employee engagement. I guess it's about quantity as well of that engagement, right? So the first question that I'd like us to maybe explore is, in which areas? Like, just how far can AI be used to connect with people in this sphere of employee engagement, do you think?
I think it's massive. I think we're already doing an aspect of it already with our systems. We'll set up workflows with predetermined communication from ourselves to go out when someone is leaving, when someone has a promotion. We use our systems currently to do that without AI. Then to bring it in, I think it's dependent on individual preference. Does someone appreciate reading something that's from an AI generated machine? Would they? What I have seen examples of from speaking at conferences and hearing stories is that some people are developing an AI chatbot, and it's not cheap to develop, but really making use of AI to answer those basic HR questions that we find in policies, that we find in procedures. So I think there is a merit to do that if it's set up right to actually help a HR function answer those queries that often floods the email inboxes. So I think that's one area where it can be used, but and again, I stress the word in a safe way.
Mm-hmm.
But then the other side of it, I think, is about how the individual connects with the organization. And the reason I say that is because I've heard of, really eye-opening examples of how some people are using AI to help with some of their neurodiversity. So, for example, if someone, for example, has dyslexia, they will use AI to help with the reading of their emails. You have other examples where in the global world we live in, employees who may want their emails to sound maybe more professional or more accustomed to the European English way of saying things, will use AI to help them draft and send emails. So I think there's not only the organization using AI, but our workforces are using AI to help themselves as well. And then we get into the realm of people using AI for their technical job roles as well. So from copywriters to marketing people to a range of functions using AI in that respect. So I think there's a scope, but I think there's a balance to be had, like with everything in HR, that we need to balance the use of AI and how much it communicates with the workforce with the human interaction. I think being careful and being very wise in the choices of where you decide AI will communicate with the workforce is important. Then it's about thinking about what your workforce feels about that, and then being obviously transparent about it. I don't think any organization or people should hide that they are using AI for communication. Be open about it. The worst thing to do is to say you're not using it and let the organization come up with their own minds about what you're doing.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I think feedback is also so important, like you just mentioned, to, try and understand, gauge how your workforce is feeling about the AI interventions. But let's go back to that human touch point that you were talking about. At what point is AI intervention too much, where it will start to take away from that human touch in communication and engagement?
I think that point was too much of, we get a lot of messages anyway in the workplace from our teams, our Slack, our emails, people, meetings. So there's a lot of messaging coming our way. There's also this, I think, fatigue of when you see messages come in, if you see it from the same sender, it becomes a bit, I'll easily ignore it. So I think it's really being really purposeful about why you're using AI in the first place. I think it comes from that strategic point of view. Why would you use AI to communicate with your workforce for purposes of engagement? So I think there needs to be a piece of work done by definitely HR professionals in collaborations with others about why they're using AI in the way they are. What benefits is that going to realize? Now, I can see AI working in large organizations for engagement, given the size and scope. I can see it less in small organizations. And I think it's about finding where you would use it. So you wouldn't, in my view, use it for emotive stories, for example. You leave that to people. But for generic messages around maybe financial updates or maybe how the company is doing, yeah, I can see AI being used there. But I think it's that you have that gut feeling, I think, as a HR professional, when something is too much, you just know. Sometimes there's not 50 emails is the number. I think that gut feeling of actually we're using it a bit too much is probably what to go with in that respect.
No, that's a very interesting point. I guess trust your gut applies here as well. And, we'll dive into the pros and cons further in a bit. But for now, I'd also like to focus on one of the biggest employee engagement priorities, pretty much always. I think this just stands true from the time the first office was ever built, which is productivity, right? This was one of the first areas that AI was applied to, as if it was the silver bullet that everyone had always been looking for. But how has it actually played out in your opinion, and what has HR got right and what needs improving in this particular aspect?
I think for myself, the productivity question around AI, if I relate it back to generally, depends on your profession. In some professions, you could use AI more. So in the tech side, coding, you hear more examples of AI being used. for productivity. Now, the question comes from, I think, an ethical or moral point of view of is it right to do that and is it allowed to do that? And that's down to the own organization's policy around the use of AI. But I find that the productivity bit is AI really making you productive? So one place I see AI being used a lot and transparently is on social platforms like LinkedIn. People will use that to write their posts. You're getting the rise of people using the AI head chatbots to be doing their videos as well. And there's been examples of where it's been in the public used for the wrong reasons and people have been defrauded because of the AI chatbot that they saw or video that they saw. So the productivity piece, I think, is being really careful about, is it making you productive? Because let's say, for example, from a HR point of view, you want to write a disciplinary policy. You could use AI and write the policy, but is that going to be a policy that's going to be fit for purpose for your organization? Probably not. How much work are you going to have to do to redraft it, recontextualize it to your own organization? And probably there's others out there that are already more ready-made, or you could ask another organization for theirs and adapt that. So I'm finding, is it becoming trendy to just use AI because it's AI and it's a nice acronym and everyone's talking about it? Are we actually using it for the right reasons? I don't know, but definitely the productivity piece, I think we've got to help because, the AI comes with a disclaimer. You look at ChatGPT, there's a disclaimer there about the factualness, if that's a word, or of the information. I think that's a really important bit there that should tell us that, whilst it has its purpose and its use, we can't rely on it to do our jobs completely. Well, not at this point anyway. So the productivity piece, I would question people to say, well, is it making you productive? And sometimes it is. Sometimes there's the simple example of team meetings, taking notes. You've got AI platforms that will turn those notes into a summary, tell you who attended, tell you who was more vocal than others. So there's uses, definitely. But on the technical side, I think there's less use rather than the operational side. I think those things like team meetings and summarizing information, I think it's better used for.
No, absolutely. And I really like this idea of purpose because I think it puts intention into the practice, right? Like you said, I think AI is just exciting for a lot of people. So we tend to go a little crazy with it as if it's the new toy in town. But very quickly, I think you realize that it's not worth it to have all of these AI tools in your company, within your organization, confusing people and, getting into the mix of all of it and not making too much of a difference at all, right? Not even an incremental change. So I think that that's a really, really valid point. Now, also to introduce communication, which is another big aspect of this conversation, Idris. How is HR using AI in widespread communication? I think you've already touched upon that, but I guess more importantly, what are we getting right there and what needs improving as a fraternity?
Well, I think with AI and communication, I don't think we're there yet as a profession. I think we're still figuring out the impact of AI on our organizations and our workforces. So I think we're not quite at the point where we can say, I'd find it rare for someone to have embedded AI in a way that is communicating with the organization. I think we're still grappling towards that kind of governance and regulation piece in our organizations about how we should use AI, where can AI benefit us? And if it does, what's the cost? And how do we train people? And how do we get people to use it? Or should we even use it at all? I think from my view, the profession is very much at a stage where it's using it in bits. Like I said, from a system point of view, our HR information systems, our ATSs, applicant tracking systems are all embedding AI into their systems. So I think it's more prominent there. I think from a communication perspective, I think there's a way to go in my view. I haven't seen many or even a few examples of how people are using AI to communicate openly with their workforces and saying they're using AI. That's the second bit, actually being transparent. So I think in my view, there's some progress to be made and some steps to be taken before we get there.
Okay, well, that's good to know. I guess it gives us a little bit of vision and direction on where we need to be headed. And at this point, do you think we have any kind of clarity on what aspects of employee engagement and communication can't or shouldn't be outsourced to AI? When it comes to HR, it's such a dynamic field. I think we get a reminder of that every time we have a conversation on Great FM. Do you have a cautionary tale from your own personal experience of where AI just hasn't worked and maybe has even caused a little bit of a disconnect, I guess?
I think there's so many examples, isn't there, of where things have gone wrong because of AI. In the outside world, I think Apple and or the BBC went into news headlines were being used via AI from Apple, and they created the wrong news headlines. So I think there's so much out there in terms of how it's gone wrong and how I think through AI there was one company that an employee managed to get access to the payroll data through using AI chatbot or AI within the organization. So I think the tells are plenty of when it's gone wrong. I think we always have to have caution with such a technology that we haven't grasped completely as a society or as workplaces. I take the example of social media, which we still see in the news. And the questions around social media and algorithms and the content that's blocked and not blocked, and that's still going on. That's with social media. So that's with existing technology that we've had for a
Mhm.
number of years. So I do think there has to be a strong sense of ethics, morals, and a real sense of using it for good and not harm, and ensuring that there's no indirect harm of the use of AI. So I do think that's my view, and others will differ. But I think, as I said, we haven't completely appreciated and understood. I mean, how many AI experts do we have in the role that are truly experts? You know,
Mhm. Mhm.
but and that's very, very few in my view. So I do think there has to be that air of caution and safety and putting people first and technology second. And if we do that, we'll be minimizing the chances of harm. It's just those sorts of things really give you an indication that there's much more understanding to do with AI and much more thinking about how to incorporate safely into society and workplaces in general.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, second that completely. It's extremely important for us to pay attention to the right ways of using it. And I really hope we do get to have a more in-depth conversation about the ethics and morals of AI use within the HR profession. Now, I want to bring up the study, the Deloitte study once again, because there was an interesting statistic there about how 76% of respondents reported plans to increase their investments in AI to gain more benefits. And this looks like a high number, but the increase in investment is actually slowing down slightly. So down from 85% than planned increased investment back in 2021. So why do you think this shift has happened, Idris? And what do HR professionals need to pay attention to so that AI is used in an optimal fashion? Do you think it's just people, getting a grasp of, oh, AI is not everything and shouldn't be the sole focus of our business? Or what do you think it is that has caused this shift?
I think when you look at things like ChatGPT, the introduction of costs and layered usage has come in, which is going to have an impact. And then you've got other people coming into play. So lots of apps having being AI based or having AI integration. You've got Copilot is out there, Gemini. So you've got the introduction of competitors and other things into it that creates that shift. And I think again, from a HR professional point of view, I think what we've got to do is look at firstly internally our own organization. What is our stance, if any, on AI? Because there has to be one. And the reason I say that is because it's happening in our organizations and we don't know who's using it, why they're using it, how they're using it, and people probably are. So I think that's the piece of work for us to think about in terms of AI and having some sort of because everyone's not asking about it, but it's so prominent. I think we need to have something there to say, here's what we think of AI and its usage, and here where we think it's an acceptable use. And I think then it's about really making people understand that AI is not a HR responsibility. As much as it's in our inboxes, it's one of the topics of our times. It's the expertise of AI sits somewhere else. Obviously, in the technical side or the data side, that's where it sits. So I think that's one thing to really be clear on, that we are not the experts in HR, nor should we be. But then that's the responsibility on us to leverage others and say, you're the expert, please guide us through this. And we can tell you about the people impact and the cultural impact on it. But the technical expertise of AI, you need to be responsible and accountable for that and guide the way with others' involvement. So I think that's the piece of work to do, rather than saying, oh, it impacts the workforce. So HR, this is your problem. AI is up to you to deal with. I don't think it is. I think it is an expertise that sits elsewhere, and we can help guide the way AI flows in the organization and is accepted, understood, agreed. So that's where I think that the bit of the real work is for us in terms of HR professionals and what we do going forward.
Nice. I again really love the point of having a stance. It's really important to articulate the way that a company wants to use AI, should use AI, and align the workforce with it. As we reach the end of the conversation, Idris, my last question to you would be about opportunities, right? Are there any unique or interesting opportunities for AI use that HR professionals should be more cognizant of? Anything coming up on the horizon that you see as a very exciting time where we can actually be using AI very efficiently and very purposefully, as you've mentioned in the conversation today?
Yeah. Well, I think it goes back to the 2 points I mentioned earlier. One, the systems bit I think is really exciting. The HR platforms that we use, I think if they integrate AI, making use of them, it is a real it takes the risk away from us in one sense and transfers it over to the organization providing the service. But those softwares that integrate it, how we can maximize the use of it from there is, I think, is really exciting and interesting. And then I think it's about how we use it as HR professionals for our own productivity. And what I mean by that is how we set up to do the work we do. Do we use AI to get rid of the maybe third-party emails that we receive a lot of? Do we use it to draft some of our emails or respond? Do we even set up as part of our HR service and use it as like I mentioned before, an AI chatbot? So I think really being purposeful about how AI can save us the time of some of the tasks that we may do that can be done or helped by AI to allow us to focus on probably the bigger and more important things that sometimes we don't get a chance to because we might be bogged down in lots of operational things. So that's the two areas that I think are exciting and for us to look into. It's from a safe point of view.
Thank you so much, Idris, for your insights. I think out of all of the really valuable takeaways, one of the most important is to be really purposeful and be intentional with the use of AI, no matter which function. And I think it is function agnostic, right? It's not just about being in HR, but especially in HR, given the connect that one has to have with the larger workforce, it is so very important and critical to be aware of the implications of AI use and how it fits in, right, with your organizational goals, with the aspirations and goals of your workforce. And I think today's conversation, that's probably the most powerful takeaway. So thank you so much for bringing that to Great FM today.
No, and thank you, Fami. It was a really good call.
Everyone, stay tuned because, we're going to be having a lot more conversations about AI use and not just about this, but all of the developments in this dynamic world of HR. So we'll be back on Great FM with another podcast. But in the meantime, stay safe and stay happy. We'll catch you soon.
This is Great FM, a podcast series by greytHR. Produced by Timber Media.